Welcome back to the Papa Meat channel. How you doing? Come on in and sit on down.
Today we are discussing metal. You know, a lot of people see my 200 Stab One shirts, they see my Gate Creeper shirts, my Dying Fetus shirts, my Sanswisky Bog shirts. I wear a lot of metal shirts and people kind of see that I like metal. I'm a big metalhead. I've been trying to find a way to introduce talking about metal on this channel because usually people don't care. Metal is very cheesy. It's very all over the place. People hear the lyrics and they're like, what are they even saying? And I gotta just say, I love metal. I love the atmosphere. I love the tension. I love that the person's voice is its own instrument, compiling into this cavalcade of crazy sounds and textures. It's aggression, it's power, it can be emotional, it can be atmospheric and cold, all of these different things, and that's why I love it. And I wanted to talk about one particular facet of metal that is probably the most interesting, and it might be even one of the most widely known. So if you've heard this before, then I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you. You can click off the video. I don't really give a what you do. But I'm going to talk about it anyways. We're going to be talking about Norwegian black metal and all of the crazy crimes and controversies that happen. Pretty much talking about the Norwegian black metal church burning. It's pretty fascinating. But I feel like I would be doing myself and you, the viewer, a disservice if we didn't at least have some of the traditional Norwegian black metal attire on. So here we go. Okay, pretty much just wanted to get into the spirit. Okay, to understand truly before we get into the church burnings and all kinds of the crazy shit we're going to talk about, you kind of have to understand where black metal comes from, which black metal comes from Norway. It all started with a band named Mayhem. More so, it all started from a guy named Euronymous, or his real name was Oystein Arseth. Hopefully I said that right. He was an indie underground musician who didn't like Florida death metal. The very beginning of the 80s, you had new wave of heavy British metal come through, and bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and all that stuff. And then you had Americans kind of take it over with introducing punk-like elements into thrash metal, and that was Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, all that kind of shit. And throughout the 80s, metal kept getting more and more extreme, right? And then in Florida, there was a thing called death metal, a death metal movement. That's bands like Death, Cannibal Corpse, all these other kind of bands. It was fast, the imagery on the albums was very explicit, and it made people go, oh my god, this is evil! There was Cannibal Corpse albums where people were dead bodies on it, and, you know, these were paintings and stuff. But overseas, a little Norwegian boy named Euronymous, who was making music in the 80s as well, he was going through and making, you know, he's like, everybody are posers, is the whole thing. Everybody is a poser except for me. And he ended up making a form of strumming a guitar called the tremolo, which is pretty much like strumming and then plucking the string on the up part of it. It sounds like this. Pretty much giving it a big atmospheric kind of like wall of sound vibe. And that is the center point of how Norwegian death metal got its sound, was just that thing. He grew up in Oslo, Norway, which is a very pristine kind of Christian town. If you look at it, it's unbelievably beautiful. And that's one thing that you'll find out too, is that almost everybody involved in the Norwegian death metal movement were pretentious little teenage and early 20-year-olds who had kind of the entire world. And I don't like Cannibal Corpse and the death metal movement in America because it's too digital and overproduced. We don't like that. And that's where we circa in something very important, which is black metal is, at least at the beginning, was something where it was supposed to legitimately scare you, and it was supposed to be, I would say it's musicianship, but it's more so performance art. The way black metal sounds is terrible in terms of audio quality. It's all about using shitty mics to record it because fuck you, and it's about making songs that are just like, sounds like people fucking dying in a basement, which is awesome. All right, it's cool. It's all counterculture. It's all a counterculture to the death metal movement that's happening, rock and roll in general. To me, it feels like a punk wave movement of people being anti-produced. You know, it's all a thing about worshiping Satan and, you know, celebrating death and destruction. Wait! Today we want to thank today's partner, Bad Dragon. If you've been a fan of this channel, then you know that Bad Dragon is a permanent fixture on this channel. They have supported us time and time again, and we want to give you the little ins and outs on what they provide. Let's say you're trying to spice things up a little bit. Maybe you want to spice up they mans. Maybe you want to spice up they womans a little bit, right? Maybe you just want to spice up yourself. Well, then Bad Dragon may be the perfect fit for you. And by fit, I mean you're going to shove things inside you, and it's going to make you feel real good, real good. Or you're going to shove things inside something else. It doesn't matter. All I know is Bad Dragon's products are expertly made. They're handcrafted. They're beautiful. And it's some of the best quality control I've ever seen. We've been to their facility. We've seen how their workers operate. It's such a positive, amazing experience. And it reflects so much in the product itself. And I could not recommend them enough. So please go check out Bad Dragon if you're trying to spice things up for yourself or in the bedroom. And be sure you tell them Papa Meat sent you. So thank you, Bad Dragon, for sponsoring this video. And back to the video. These little motherfuckers are onto something. It was getting some attention. The nature of the music itself, it's cold. It's much like Norway. It's cold. It's desolate. You can really see the people growing up in this area making this music because it's weird. Not a lot of times in music do I describe something via temperature. Like, it's not hot, right? Maybe if it's fast, you say, like, ooh, it's red hot. But Norwegian black metal it's almost like I'm standing in a Norwegian forest and it's just like the breeze going through. Yes, there's fast things happening and it's chaotic and stupid, but if you step outside of it and look at the bigger picture, it feels like a very chilly wind going through a forest. It's all about atmospheric walls of sounds. And that's just kind of what it is. That's kind of the point with a lot of metal too, is the lyrics are fucking stupid. It's all just usually something involving Satan, death, murder, a lot of the same stuff. But it's how you say it, and it's the way that you go about it, which gives it such an impactful sound, or such an additional piece to the band that makes it so important. Which the first wave of black metal started in the 1980s with the band Venom, which is considered to be the first of the black metalers, which is people who wore face paint, which King Diamond was the guy who made Grandma, what was it like? That's his voice. And he was in a band called Merciful Fate, and Venom and Bathory, another band called Celtic Frost, were kind of the first people to come together. They made a mixture on the new wave of heavy British metal, more punk, faster, darker, more satanic, more evil. And that's what inspired Euronymous to kind of go. And I'm going to use a lot of crazy fucking names. I mean, even the Swedish names or Norwegian names, Oystein Arseth. The American audience is going to be like, I thought, why isn't his name just Jacob? What's up with that? It wasn't until the late 80s into early 90s when black metal really took form and we start getting into the crazy. Stay with me. I know, it's crazy. You probably don't give a shit. It gets good, I swear to God. It all starts, like I said, with Euronymous, aka Oystein Arseth, founder and central figure to the early black metal scene. And Euronymous, if you're wondering, is Greek for demon. His career started at age 16 in 1984 when he co-founded the band Mayhem with his bassist Necrobutcher and drummer Scheitel Mayhem. Mayhem eventually left and was replaced by the new drummer Hellhammer. Okay? And then in 1988, they got their singer Pel Ying Olin, who called himself Dead. The singer introduced himself to the band by mailing them a package to Euronymous. Inside the package was a copy of his demo tape, letter of his band's future, and a crucified mouse. Euronymous was impressed with Dead's unique vocal style and accepted him into the band, and Dead became Mayhem's new vocalist. And Dead is extremely important to the metal scene. Dead was the guy who took the inspiration from King Diamond and Merciful Fate, the face paint and all that stuff, and he was like, let's do it live.
We'll do it live.
Which also, Mayhem is inspired by one of the songs from Venom, so you can see the clear inspiration. Pel Ying Olin got his name Dead due to the fact that he was pronounced dead for some period after a childhood accident. It was from an ice skating accident, but his brother claims it was from severe beating of bullies. So Dead became obsessed with death and morbidity. Gross, dead, evil, carcasses, zombies. Some psychologists suggest in post-mortem analysis that he may have had Cotard syndrome. Cotard syndrome. That's not funny, Nick. I understand what Cotard sounds like, but we're not going there, okay? Wherein the affected person holds the delusion that they are dead or do not exist and or are rotting. With Dead in the band, it really solidified them and started giving them more of an audience in Norway and Europe in general. It was really the live performances of Mayhem that Dead shined through. I mean, for live shows, Dead would paint himself up in corpse paint, and he popularized the term corpse paint, what I'm wearing. Even had his clothes buried in the ground before concerts to rot and have the grave scent as he portrayed a corpse on stage. Dead would also cut himself while singing on stage. One time, he cut himself with a broken bottle so badly that he had to be taken to the hospital afterwards. He would also have pig heads that he would throw into the audience. All this kind of crazy shit that as a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, you're like, what the fuck is this? Sure, Cannibal Corpse is hard and fast and everything, but no one is cutting themselves bleeding on stage. It really introduces all the performance art into the acts, and it kind of sets a precedence as well to what Euronymous' vision is. He's seeing that people are gravitating to why they like black metal so much, which is the intensity, you know, the evil nature of it. It really plants a seed early on that is going to grow into the shittiest tree imaginable. On tour with Mayhem, Dead even found a dead crow, wrapped it in a plastic bag, and took a whiff before each show on stage with the scent of death in his nostrils. And he would also, you know, collect dead geese. He would kill cats, put them in his house, in his bed, under his bed. He was just kind of a curious little cat, all in all. Overall, he was described as a melodramatic, depressed, neurotic person. But in April of 1991, something crazy happened. Dead took his own life, and inside the house Mayhem used for rehearsing all of their music. He used a hunting knife to slit open both of his wrists and his throat, and then he proceeded to shoot himself in the forehead with a shotgun. He left a note which started with, "Excuse the blood." Some people say that the note said, like, "Let the party begin" after that, or something along those lines. So also part of his note, "Nobody will ever understand this, but as sort of an explanation, I am not human. This is only a dream, and soon I will awake." Pretty awesome, not gonna lie. Like, it's tragic, but at the same time, holy like, what a story. Leading up to his death, it is said that Euronymous encouraged Death to commit suicide. We're just gonna say suicide. Unaliving. The guy slit both of his wrists, his throat, and shot himself in the head. People also speculated that, you know, it's just Euronymous was this figure. I'm brutal also. Well, if you're so fucking sad, then why don't you just kill yourself? Bleh. But really, it was all just kind of a facade. So I think that when people say that he urged him to kill himself, I don't think that he really thought he would ever follow through with it. I think Euronymous thought that Dead was a lot like him, which was a guy that was a lot more bark than bite in the brutal aspect, in the, you know, the I'm crazy. But no, he did that. Pretty crazy. The most insane thing that propelled black metal to be on the map and to start this insane spree of crimes that we're getting ready to talk about was what Euronymous did next. Euronymous, upon witnessing the aftermath of his suicide, rearranged Dead's body, knife, and gun, and then he went out and bought a disposable camera and took pictures of Dead's corpse. The images he took became so infamous. I mean, people might have seen it. It became pretty infamous online and people talking about it, but not back then, but even when I was a kid. He made a bootleg version of his album, Dawn of the Black Hearts, and made that the cover of the album. And that pretty much set the world on fire in terms of metal and music around that time. Because you also have to remember that metal was pretty mainstream by this point. It was, like, I would say, comparable to like SoundCloud rappers in like 2016. Like, there was a wave of youthful movement that's happening, and when this happened, it lit all kinds of things. I remember, I think, like Kerrang! Magazine, which was a popular metal magazine, wanted to interview Mayhem, and it completely broke Mayhem and black metal as a whole into the stratosphere of people's metal knowledge, like into the cultural zeitgeist that was metal as a whole. Dead's suicide picture being used on the album cover was the thing that broke everybody through. Another thing that made it so fascinating to the story with the picture was that bits of Dead's head were harvested by Euronymous and were distributed amongst the musicians of his band and people that he trusted. So he made necklaces out of Dead's skull fragments, and he said, "Here you go." That is, once again, speculation. I've heard people also say that Euronymous admitted to people that it was like chicken bones, or it was fake, and that it was just all a part of the facade that he was trying to create. But he did take those pictures. And that is one thing that he actually, it was up that he did. Euronymous exploited Dead's death as a way to cultivate Mayhem's evil image. He also claimed that Dead killed himself because black metal became too trendy and commercialized. His suicide was launching point for black metal into the mainstream media, something Death hated the idea of. This is the rise of the popularity. Once we get into 91 was a very important movement because we get all into something pretty funny, in my opinion. In 1991, Euronymous opened the infamous record shop called Helvet, which is Norwegian for hell. I'm pretty sure it was also in Oslo. It's a beautiful little downtown area, and then there's just this shit-stained store where there's black walls and black curtains and swords, because they're all Lord of the Ring nerds. They were all like D&D nerds, and I think a lot of their names that they had were all Lord of the Rings or like trolls or all kinds of fantasy stuff, and they're just like, isn't this totally brutal that we have this cool little corner shop down here, and everybody, it's called hell, and everybody's totally mad about it. The people going to McDonald's down the road don't even know what to think when they walk by our spooky little show. Euronymous started an independent record label called Death Like Silence Productions, which is where a lot of these black metal bands started. Euronymous kind of became this judge of what is black metal and what is not black metal. Somebody would come in and be like, hey, this is my band. He's like, yeah, poser, I don't know. Like, if you want Bon Jovi CDs, they'll probably have to go down the street to Best Buy, okay? This is a quote from Euronymous. He said, real death metal should be something normal people are afraid of, not something mothers can listen to. Because you know all of the mothers putting on Cannibal Corpse and all kinds of other 90s Florida death metal. I'm sure all the mothers are listening to that too. But I can just imagine, I mean, put up a picture of Euronymous. I mean, we've probably seen him a couple times in this video so far, but imagine this guy being like, real death metal should be stuff that mothers are afraid of, like what Mayhem does, because what we do is a little more real in the grand scheme of it all, and I think that bands that are over-commercialized is like my grandma would put it on, like it was Elvis Presley. You know what I mean? It has that vibe. I'm doing a German accent, but it fits very well, so I'm going to keep rolling with it. Euronymous would always say stuff like, originally he believed that black metal should stay underground and it shouldn't be this big thing. To me, it's pretty clear to see that he was creating all this mysticism around black metal, how evil it was, to sell records. I mean, the guy wanted to be a rock star, is what I see. He steeped himself into mysticism, Satanism, and controversy to maintain relevance, and Euronymous wanted to be opposition to society and tried concentrating more on just being evil than having a real satanic philosophy. Helvet became the home base for an intergroup called the Black Circle. It was presented as an organized, cult-like group of militant Satanists whose activities were funded by the record shop, which sounds really cool. It was mostly just a shitty basement where they painted a pentagram on a wall and they would get drunk in the basement. That's what the Satanic Cult did, okay? The Black Circle was comprised of many people, with such names as Snorrook from the band Thorns, the other band members from Mayhem, band members from Emperor, and of course, we can't forget, one of the most important and controversial figures in this entire story is Varg Vikernes from the band Burzum. Varg Vikernes came in, did It was just kind of like all talk. You know, Euronymous would sit there and he'd be like, it's so brutal, like, I would totally kill a woman if I wanted to, right, guys? They're like, you probably would. And then Varg came in and he's hearing all of these things and he's, you know, they're perpetrating this idea of intense rebellion. And Varg takes it to the next level. I think he perceives this all as real and he wants to be a part of the movement. I think he wants to take over the black metal movement himself. So now we get to enter into Varg Vikernes and the Norwegian black metal church burnings. Mostly Varg hated Christianity because it went against the old ways of the land. He was a very pagan guy and he thought that Christianity came in and it took over and it was just a poison on its original beliefs, his ancestors' beliefs and stuff. Euronymous wanted to paint the public perception that black metal members were devil worshippers who wanted to spread hatred, sorrow, and evil. But because of this ideology being pushed, many members of the black metal scene began committing acts of arson throughout Norway. The first church burning happened in 1992, and it's speculated that Varg Vikernes was responsible. Varg was trying to push the boundaries of him being like, Euronymous is all talk, I'm going to actually go and burn this church down. And these churches are thousands of years old. I mean, old stuff, and it's just an act of protest against the Christian church in favor for his paganistic beliefs. But I want to also say that Varg also went as Lord Grishnak. Grishnak is an orc from Lord of the Rings, so once again, it sounds cool, and then you're like, well, that's nothing against Lord of the Rings, but it's just like, you can't name your satanic evil group of people who are like, we need to be scary, and it's all Lord of the Rings characters. I don't think that adds up. He hated Christianity, and he committed acts of revenge for the Christian desecration of Viking graves and temples. This started a chain reaction of arsons from 1992 to 96. Over 50 churches were targeted by the black metal groups, which essentially what was happening was a pissing contest began. Seriously, so infantile in nature, where people look at it now and they're like, that's insane, but really it was a bunch of spoiled Norwegian kids going around being like, yeah, I burnt down a church last night, it's no big deal, it's my second fun. And then the other guy would be like, well, I've burnt down 2 churches too. And it became this weird pissing contest to see who could do the most weird, evil, fucked up shit. But since you're in Norway, they've had no repercussions to any of the bad things they've done. So they're kind of like living in this fantasy thinking that nothing's going to happen to them. It went as far as people beginning to murder actual people. In August of 1992, one of the members of the band, Emperor Bard Faust, killed Magni Andresen, hopefully I said that right, a gay man in Lillehammer. Faust was sexually proposed by a man walking home one night, and he agreed to walk with him to the woods. But once they arrived, Faust stabbed the man 37 times. Faust claimed to have no remorse, and the day after the stabbing, he alleged burnt down Holmenkollen Chapel with Varg and Euronymous. It took an entire year before Faust was arrested for this murder. This is kind of interesting too, because this is also, there's a little theory. There's a lot of speculation that there's a lot of gay hatred in the black metal scene and, you know, in the metal scene in general. I mean, the metal scene is known to be very, like, racist and all kinds of stuff. In the black metal scene, a big part of it was Varg had said that Euronymous was actually lovers with Dead and that there was a lot of homosexuality in black metal. It seems like it was a bunch of closeted homosexuals trying to act brutal and against God, instead of just kind of coming out and being gay, because it's, who knows how that would be received. They're just like, well, what if we just kissed each other as an act of defiance against God? Like, okay. In 1993, though, Varg was interviewed for Norway's biggest newspaper. He went under the pseudonym Count Grishnak, which, once again, we said Grishnak is an orc from Mordor. Here, Varg claimed to know who burnt down the churches. This is the dumbest interview of all time. Basically, in this interview, he says, I know who burned it down. And it was very obvious that he was talking about himself and that he knew other people.
Merker vi.
Ja, ante
Foreløpig
det kunne
andre.
få sånne konsekvenser.
Jeg hadde jo forventet et avhør, og hvor kunne forklare at dette var bare blast og musikken. Det ble jo litt mer alvorlig da, tydeligvis. Politiet har jo...
It's unbelievable. He just shows how stupid and naive these children are. This was a plan by Varg and Euronymous to spread fear and to promote black metal. Following the interview, Euronymous decided to shut down Helvet as it began to draw attention to the police, and Varg was furious at Euronymous. Varg spent 6 weeks in police custody for the interview he did, and I think there was a growing resentment towards him and Euronymous, which, even from the beginning of the black metal movement, Varg and Euronymous, I feel like, were always kind of competing to see who has the bigger dick in the black metal scene. And on August 10th, 1993, Varg drove hundreds of miles to Euronymous' apartment and stabbed him to death. Not only did he stab him to death, Euronymous' body was found outside of his apartments, and he had 23 stab wounds. 2 to the head, 5 to the neck, and 16 to the back. And actually, he ended on a head one because he stabbed the knife so hard into Euronymous' head that he was unable to fetch it out, and he just left it. There's a lot of speculation to why Varg killed Euronymous. I mean, what's interesting is we have video proof of Varg being interviewed and him describing why he killed Euronymous.
And he was planning to kidnap me. He was planning to knock me out with an electroshock pistol, like the type the security guards carry, and tie me up, take me into the forest, and make a snuff film while torturing me to death. And of course, I took it serious.
So Varg's reasoning is that, Euronymous was going to kill me. So instead, I went to him, and I put the thing in his court, and he couldn't back it up, and I killed him. It was self-defense, technically. They're being upset because royalties weren't paid and all kinds of stuff. When really, it feels like just an accumulation of a mentally unwell person that feels like the music movement they're doing is so important and so pure, and he wants to be at the top of it, that it feels like he just murdered this person after all of the kind of crazy that they put each other through. But 9 days later, on August 19th, 1993, Varg was arrested. Police found 150 kilograms of dynamite and 3,000 rounds of ammunition in his home. People speculated that him and Euronymous were going to blow up another church to promote their new album, but Varg denies these claims. He said that he was collecting explosives and ammunition in order to defend Norway. In May of 1994, Varg was sentenced to 21 years of prison, which is Norway's maximum penalty. He was convicted of murder of Euronymous and the arson of 4 churches and a possession of explosives. You look at this trial here, when he gets the sentencing, there's a very famous thing of the camera looking at him, and he looks at the camera and does like a cheeky little smile. Like he's just like, oops, I got caught. That kind of thing. Varg got 21 years, and he got into the Norway prison system, which the Norway prison system, the max sentence you can get is 21 years. But it's like you get to live in basically an apartment. Like you're still in prison, but you get to do rec activities. It was just extremely relaxed. I mean, in a way, it feels like you were not even punished. The only punishment you have is that you have to stay there. That's the only punishment, it seems like. Otherwise than that, very extremely laid-back prison system. And even Varg went on to make, I think, 2 other studio albums in prison, and they're some of his best work. And I hate to say it, because he's like truly such a piece of shit, but goddamn if the music isn't good. Philosophem, whatever that album is called, it's the best black metal album. If you're looking to get into black metal, that's the one to listen to. On the day of sentencing, 2 more churches were burned down, which were believed to be a symbolic support to Varg. Yeah! Way to go, Varg! In 2009, Varg was released from prison, and after the death of Euronymous, a cult developed around his memory. He was hailed as a king and the godfather of black metal, and that month, Mayhem released their album De Mysterious Dom Satanas, which has Varg and Euronymous playing together. Euronymous' family had asked Mayhem's drummer Hellhammer to remove the bass track recorded by Vikernes, but Hellhammer said, quote, I thought it was appropriate that the murderer and victim were on the same record. Necron Butcher left Mayhem after Euronymous' death, and then there were only 2 band members left. After the death of Euronymous and these things, and people getting murdered, church burnings happened, really black metal never hit a giant peak. It was just kind of a flash in the pan in a moment in the 90s that got completely overcome by grunge music, the fall of grunge music, and even a groove metal like bands like Pantera and Sepultura kind of completely blew everything out of the water. But that doesn't mean that the music doesn't have any kind of weight or that the music can't be pretty good. They're just made by pretty terrible fucking people. Besides one hero, which I want to say that out of all the people at the black metal scene back then, Fenriz, the drummer for Dark Throne, who has two of the best fucking black metal albums of all time, A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Transylvanian Hunger. Just a wholesome guy who was just like, I just want to make music. And now the aftermath is that black metal, I feel like, has inspired a lot of things. Performance art, it's inspired to be controversial in their art. And there's still even black metals that exist today. Even some things of a little more mainstream bands like Death Heaven. Even smaller bands like Devil Master, or even, giant fucking bands like Ghost. You see the elements of their inspiration and their kind of influence on these bands. Varg Vikernes has been in all kinds of controversial scandals, right? I mean, the motherfucker's racist as shit, sexist. He's just kind of this weird neo-Nazi kind of figure, and there's no really getting around it. He ended Burzum, I believe, in 2019 and released a album in 2020 as the final kind of send-off, but it's just he kind of thought that, black metal ended up being too cringe and it was too commercialized, so he started doing like Hobbit music. Now he lives in the woods of France with his family, and they literally live like hobbits. He even had a channel called the Thulian Perspective, where he would like fix his Jeep and watch his kids run around the French forest, and he would basically just say hate speech and other kinds of weird stuff, or talk about how nobody knows any of the stuff about black metal besides him. Everybody's lying. There is an amazing book called Lords of the Chaos. They made a movie about it. It's okay, I guess. The book is incredible. If you're ever interested in getting like super deep into this, Lords of Chaos you should read. And also there's a great documentary that follows Fenriz called Until the Light Takes Us. And that's also where you get interviews with Varg and Fenriz and stuff. So it's very interesting. In terms of actual crazy that happens in music history, this is one that feels up there. It isn't necessarily just drugs and alcohol. It's not about who partied the craziest. It's about people who wanted to prove that they were way more brutal and way more metal, and it feels so fickle and so fucking stupid that it's just one of the most interesting pieces of music history, in my opinion. So this is a little flash course in that story of it all, and these people, these controversial figures, make the music more interesting, in my opinion. Feels like this giant warning sign, but some of the music is so good, dude. Not condoning anything, I'm just saying the music is fucking cool. Dunkelheit by Burzum is like just fucking awesome. You have pieces of shit like the guys in Emperor, and they made the album In the Night Side Eclipse, which kind of took it a more melodical kind of way, and it just is fucking chilling. It's just also cold and fucking haunting. But if I had to, if you were looking to get into any of the albums themselves, I wouldn't recommend Mayhem. That's just me. I know they're the OGs, but I would suggest Burzum's Philosophem, Emperor's In the Night Side Eclipse, and I would recommend Dark Throne's Blaze in the Northern Sky. I would say to pick up those three. Good stuff. Don't know what I'm supposed to tell you. Also, Death Heaven's cool. Sunbather. Also, there's a Native American new age black metal band called Black Braid. Some of the most atmospheric and cool fucking songs ever. Also, there's a song called The River of Time Flows Through Me. Are you kidding me? I want to come hearing that title. It's so fucking cool. Black Braid rules. Seeing me in these band shirts, I hope that you do give a lot of love to these things, because I feel like metal is a very underappreciated art form. So, I love you, metal, and I hope you love me back. Also, Varg, you're a piece of shit. I don't know, go fuck yourself, I guess. Alright, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
I'm Raven, your acid bath princess of the darkness.
And I'm Tara.
And we're sitting here in Tara's room, rocking out to MCR and celebrating 2009, or the new year. Which we don't really understand why people are making such a big deal about it, because really, one